back to Ina Bear Farm. I want to do a video today to show you how I'm setting up my drip irrigation system in our kitchen garden. There's probably other videos out there on this subject, but I found that a lot of the things that I could find really weren't that helpful the first time that I was setting this up years ago. And so I'd kind of like to go through it piece by piece just to show you what I think is the easiest way to think about it. It's just kind of like a modular system where you, like Legos, you're putting it together to fit your needs. So for starters, I like to get all my little bits and pieces at dripdepot.com. Not a sponsorship thing or anything. I just recommend them because they have these really great kits that you can start with. They're out of Oregon. They ship most places for free. Not the case if you live in Hawaii. But it's just hard to wrangle up all these little custom fittings for what you need sometimes, unless maybe you go to a really well-stocked specialized store or something like that. So you start on Drip Depot and you start with a kit, and it gives you like a really nice baseline of what you're going to need for your project, and then you can customize it. And so that way you can like subtract things you don't need or add things that you do. And it all kind of starts with the fittings that go on your hose bib outside here. So the first thing I want to point out when we look at our hose bib is there's a Y splitter on here. I highly recommend this because you do not want to be taking your irrigation fitting on and off. It's kind of a pain to get it on. You want it on and secure and just leave it there, but you still want the functionality of a hose, if for nothing else than to just drain it out every once in a while, like on a hot day, a lot of hot water getting stored in your pipes or something. Drain that out before you send the hot water to your irrigation. But usually you probably like to use a hose in your area as well, filling up buckets, whatever. So keep that Y splitter on there, and it's just it's got valves on there that you can decide which one you want to use. So after your Y splitter, what we've got here is the top piece is a little fitting, and I've already kind of screwed this all together, but no worries, it's super easy to screw together. But this is a vacuum brake, and what that does, as far as I understand it, it keeps the water from your irrigation system from going back up into your water supply in your house. That could be a kind of nasty or dangerous situation if you've got some bacteria or something, some little microorganisms that get into your water line, and then you don't have the vacuum seal right there, and it sucks it back up, and then you turn it on at your faucet and end up drinking it or something. It's unlikely that something like that would happen, but you really want that protection in place. In fact, I think in some places that might be a legal requirement. I don't know, I feel like I've heard that somewhere. But the next thing down is a pressure reducer. And this might seem like an extra step, but most hose bibs have pressure coming out of them like 70 or 80 psi. I think that's right the last time I looked. That's pretty high. This brings that down to 15 psi, so that's a pretty big chunk to lower it. The reason being is if you run high pressure water out here through your system, it'll blow out some of your fittings. We'll show you later in the video when we attach the fittings that actually go out to the garden. And those fittings are kind of loosely attached, so if you run super high pressure water through there, it'll just blow them right off. And next thing you know, you have geysers flying up in your garden. You don't want that. So this reduces the pressure. The next thing down is a filter. You definitely want a filter because you just don't want any kind of grit or anything getting down into your line and plugging up your the little drip emitters, because once they get plugged up, they're kind of ruined. So you don't want like hard water, calcium, and other minerals and stuff just leaching in there constantly and plugging up the whole system. And this has a little drainage piece on there so that from time to time you can just flush out that filtration system, and you can turn the water on and it'll kick through that filter real easily. You can put the cap on there. The final fitting for our hose bib is the way that we connect this whole hose bib to our piping for our irrigation. And so that's this whole fitting down here. It's got a part that just screws on this piece, and then the last little thing down here at the bottom. I'm going to show you how this works on our next piece, but basically this is our main line of our irrigation. This is 3/4 inch, which carries a pretty decent amount of water. 3/4 inch is pretty standard for most home applications. You could probably do a 1/2 inch in a lot of situations, especially for a smaller garden, something like that. And then once you get up to like really big, more like big greenhouse agricultural systems or something, maybe you want a 1 inch. But this just slides in over this nozzle here, and once it's on nice and good, you just screw on the screw mechanism until it's hand tight, and that keeps it from being able to release off of there. So again, 3/4 inch. You want to buy as much of this as you need. You can essentially buy it in like 100-foot rolls or 200-foot rolls. It's good to have extra though. You'll make mistakes, and you'll find you can always use some extra of this stuff. And it's not that expensive. Oh, Lucky the farm cat has joined us for our irrigation video. Hello, Lucky. Glad you're here. All right, so we're gonna walk over to the garden now, and I'll show you how I somewhat buried this main line as we're heading over to the garden, and then I'll show you how the rest of the setup is gonna look, and then walk you through each step of that. So as we go, you can see here where the main line is. I just dug out a couple inches down, like just below the grass line, basically. You do not have to like for real bury this. Now, if you live up in a northern climate where you get hard freezes or something, and your intention is to leave this out all winter, then yeah, I guess you would have to bury it pretty deep. But that's really not how this line is usually intended to be used. When we lived in Maryland, which is, it's not frozen tundra, but it gets pretty damn cold there sometimes. We would just bring this in the winter. You don't need it in the winter anyways. So I would just, to reduce the wear on it, I'd roll the whole thing up and store it away in the winter. Here I intend to leave it out all year. Sunshine is my enemy here. So I just need it to be just deep enough that the grass will cover it back up, a little bit of dirt, and I can mow over it without fear of hitting it, and that's it. And that way I'll get a lot more life out of it without the sun baking it all the time. So we'll see the route that it takes on over to the garden. Probably be about 100 feet from the hose bib to the garden gate. Now, once we have reached the destination, and I made sure to dig the trench before, just to make sure nothing would go wrong. I snipped it off because the main line is gonna fork into two lines here. And to snip it, I just use my garden shears. They work pretty well for it. There are actually like pipe cutter type deals you can buy. A good sharp knife will go right through it. It's not that hard to cut, but the garden shears seem to work pretty well. And so if you come around here, you'll be able to see where the end of our line is. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna run a T-fitting that looks like this. So that main line is gonna come from the hose bib to here. And then we're gonna run two more of those 3/4 inch main lines, one going down the hill in our garden and one going up the hill in our garden. So again, 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch, 3/4 inch. And then we'll cap those at the ends, those side lines that run out like a T. And then we'll attach our drip tape to those lines and send those running down the actual vegetable beds. So we'll show you that later in the video, but first let me show you just how easy it is to install one of these fittings here. So again, this is our T-fitting. You take our main line, and we've got the piece coming off there. We just kind of ease it in over that barb. And when we've got it where we want it, then all we have to do is tighten this piece down. And once it's tight, it is locked in place. It is not going to go anywhere. No worries. So now that we've got that down, you may want to fork this down with a couple garden stakes or something like that, especially if it's in an area where it's a tripping hazard. But we'll come back in a few minutes and we'll show you how we run these other 3/4 lines down the sides, and we'll put those end caps on those. So we'll be right back. Okay, so we've laid down our side lines, our T-lines of this 3/4 inch poly tubing. And so now, before we connect our drip lines, which will go down the vegetable rows, the drip lines will get connected to the main line here. But before we do that, we have openings at the ends of both of our poly tubing, so our T that we split out from the original garden gate. And if we don't close that up, the water is just going to gush out and it won't be pressurized enough to go down the drip tape. So they make these special fittings that just have a cap that goes on the end, and they call these, I think they're called end caps. And so with these, you just have to make sure you get the right size. And as you're kind of sketching out how your irrigation system is going to be in your head, you want to make sure you have enough of these to plug up the ends of any of the poly tubing that you're going to be using. And that depends on the size of the garden, the shape of the garden. You'll see in a minute when we start laying out our drip tape, one of the main reasons that we're using long rows in our kitchen garden is because it makes using the drip tape really easy. But first, let's look at this. As I showed you a minute ago, these fittings are super easy to put on. We'll show you again. This hose just goes over the barb. You just kind of work it on there. And then once it's on, screw that down. Now again, every once in a while, you may want to come and just open that up and turn your line on and just kind of let it blow out anything that's in the line. But for now, you want to cap that. And these ends of the lines, probably another good place to put a stake down that can hold this down so it's not, you know, flying up in the air or a tripping hazard or anything. And you're going to need it to lay down before you can lay your drip tape. So we got one more of these pieces. We'll put it on the other of our T-line that goes down to the bottom of the garden. And then we'll be ready to come back in a few minutes and we'll put that drip tape on. So we'll be back in a minute and we'll show you how the drip tape connects to the main line. Okay, so now we have our two main lines, or our main line split off into the two pieces going up and down the garden. We've laid out one line of drip tape here. So this, as you can see, is just flat drip tape. This stuff, you can get tons of it. We have a roll of 4,000 feet of it, a little more than I need. But you can get tons of it for fairly cheap. And it has little emitters, which is where the water comes out, with a certain spacing on here. 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, all that stuff, 12-inch. So that's just how far apart the parts are where the water is going to drip out of. It's totally up to you what you need. This is 8-inch. I wanted 6-inch, but they didn't have 6-inch, so I got 8 because I can totally work with 8. We plant a lot of our plants about 12 to 18 inches apart, and the 6-inch just allowed me to be flexible and to spread water kind of all around. But the 8-inch will do a pretty good job as well. So I've got it run all the way to the end of my line. So now I know I can go ahead and snip it right here again using my pruning shears. Boom, see how easy that works. And then as we get down to the main line here, I'm going to show you how we make this connection. So this is actually my first time using this fancy hole punch. I'm used to using a pretty simple one, so we'll see how this goes. We'll catch it live on camera. But I believe with these hole punches, all you really have to do is lay into the pipe, put some pressure on it until you feel it go through. And then once the actual punch goes through, you hear that kind of pop. You can use the other end to maneuver it around, hollow it out a little bit. Now, this is the fitting that we're going to use to attach our drip tape. So this we call the barb end. That goes in the hole that I just punched. And because it's kind of like got a reverse, shape to it, it locks the water out pretty good. I really like to have the option of turning my water on and off. So because I water things at different rates, and then some beds aren't really in use and I don't need to water them as often as other ones. So I'm putting one of these on every single line of drip tape. You don't have to do that, but I think it's a really good feature to take advantage of. So once we have that hole cut in there, it should just pop right on. And then the drip tape, make sure you more or less have the emitter side down. And then just kind of open up the end of it that you're going to be using. Just like the other one, it just slides right on. Make sure it's nice and tight on there. And then this piece will slide down over that and lock. So that's really about it. And then we will put an end cap on our drip line at the end to keep the water from rushing out of the end, like we talked about with our poly lines as well. And the same thing, just fits right over. Make sure that the cap is secure. And then once you have all your drip lines, you should be ready to go. You can open it up and do a test run. The last thing I wanted to mention was every once in a while you'll poke a hole that you wish you hadn't. And so you're going to want to get a hold of these things called goof plugs. When you're ordering your kits, just buy tons of them, 50. Get more than you think you're going to need, because mistakes come with the territory. You're going to make holes that you wish you hadn't. And that just allows you to stick a little plug in there and plug up the hole, and then the water won't come out. And that's all you need. So that's really it. If you have any questions or comments, definitely throw those in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. We'd like to be here as a support for the food growing community. Otherwise, we're going to attach the rest of our lines and fire this baby up and enjoy the fact that now we can just turn on the faucet and go and take care of other things, and we don't have to hand water all this. So give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Come see us again soon. We'll have a lot of updates coming your way soon. And we appreciate you here at Ina Bear Farm. Aloha.